Okay, here's your next sample problem. So what I did was I wrote down all of my molar masses on the side ahead of time so that we would have them nice and easy. It's a good idea if you have complicated ones, just to figure them out ahead of time. So we're going to react 40 grams of sodium hydroxide with 60 grams of sulfuric acid. The first thing we want to do is find the limiting reagent. All right. So I'm going to pick, you can pick either one. So let's start with the second one this time, 60 grams of sulfuric acid. So I'm going to pick 60 grams of sulfuric acid and I'm going to go to my sodium hydroxide, okay? So 60 grams of sulfuric acid. And here I have 98.09 grams of sulfuric acid to 1 mole. Now I'm headed over to the sodium hydroxide, so that's a 1:2 ratio. 1 mole of H2SO4 to 2 moles of NaOH. Now I want to get to grams of sodium hydroxide because I know I was given 40 grams. So 1 mole of sodium hydroxide, and that's right here, is 40 grams. Canceling out my units. Yes, yes, good, and good. Okay, I'm on a roll. Now I'm going to use my calculator. So 60 times 2 times 40 equals, divided by 98.09 equals. And I get 48 point, and I get 3 digits, 9. That is what is needed to react with 60 grams of sulfuric acid. But I was only given 40 grams of sodium hydroxide. So my 40 grams of sodium hydroxide is limiting. I do not have enough. So I'm going to mark that immediately, right away, limiting, which means that my 60 grams is excess. Okay, great. I have labeled those. Check. Sodium hydroxide is limiting. Okay, next, so that's A. B. Find the mass of the product that can be produced. So we've learned that we're going to always start with the limiting because what's the point of starting with the excess? That's going to tell us the excess amount, the product that the excess amount can get us, but we're going to run out of the limiting one. So we're going to start with 40 grams of the sodium hydroxide. We're going to start with the amount of sodium hydroxide that we were given, just like we would start with the limiting amount of filling or the limiting amount of wafers that we were given. So I'm going to start with the 40 grams of sodium hydroxide. So that is, oh, look, it's 40 grams here too. 1 mole. Okay, 40 grams of sodium hydroxide, which is in fact 1 mole. That's weird. Okay. And where I'm headed is to the mass of the product because I'm doing B. So that's actually a 2-to-1 relationship. So 2 ratio, 2 moles of sodium hydroxide to 1 mole of Na2SO4, sodium sulfate. Now, the mass of the product, so I've got to go from moles of sodium sulfate to grams, and I have that right here, 142.05. 1 mole sodium sulfate to 142.05 grams of sodium sulfate. So now I'm going to cancel. Yep, everything checks out. And now I'm going to run my calculator. And I get 71.0, 3 digits. So I get 71.0 grams of sodium sulfate. So 71, let's put that here, 71.0 grams of Na2SO4. Great. Okay, excellent. Next, find the amount in grams of the excess reagent remaining. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit harder because I don't know how much of the sulfuric acid is going to be used if I start with my limiting reagent. So I didn't figure that out. What I did figure out is that if I use all of my sulfuric acid, I will need 48.9 grams of sodium hydroxide. But the thing is, I can't use it all because I don't have enough sodium hydroxide. So what I have to do for letter C is I have to start with my 40 grams of sodium hydroxide, and I have to head over to my sulfuric acid. And that's going to tell me when I use all of my sodium hydroxide, which is limiting, I'm going to run out of it, how much of the 60 grams will I use? Then I can subtract that from my sulfuric acid. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to head over to the sulfuric acid. So 40 sulfuric acid, and this is a 1:2 ratio. Oh, nope, wrong. Sodium hydroxide goes here, right? Because it's 40 grams to 1 mole of sodium hydroxide. Now, this is a 2:1 molar ratio. 2:1 here. So 2 moles of sodium hydroxide to 1 mole of H2SO4. Okay, now 1 mole of H2SO4, and I go over here, and that's 98.09. Okay. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm saying if I use all of my limiting one, how much of my excess will I use? So with my calculator, $49.0 grams of sulfuric acid. So that's how much of the sulfuric acid I'm going to use when I use all 40 grams of the sodium hydroxide. And as you can see, I have more than enough sulfuric acid because I was given 60 grams, which is great because I can see that it still tells me that the sulfuric acid is excess. So it still says, oh, you only need 49 grams of that sulfuric acid and you were given 60. So see, it is excess. So that's confirming what I already knew. Whereas here, if I use the whole 60 grams of sulfuric acid, I need 48.9 grams of the sodium hydroxide, and I only have 40 grams. That is confirming that it is limited. But this doesn't answer the question, because the question is find the amount of excess. So 60 grams of sulfuric acid minus 49 grams of sulfuric acid is 11 grams remaining. So again, this is given, this is used, and this is remaining. So my answer is, up here, there's 11.0 grams remaining of H2SO4. So a big help is to put your molar masses down first, all right? And then start running your numbers. And remember, you always want to start with your limiting reagent, and then go to what you need, because that will tell you, I mean, there's no reason to ever run a reaction with your excess, because you can't do anything with it. It's going to be giving you totals that are more, because you're going to run out of your limiting no matter what you're doing. Okay? All right.